So, I'm going to tell you an embarrassing drunk story. This story is called Taco Pocket. So, this story takes place around 2013, and I was around like 24 years old. And, like every weekend, a couple of friends of ours were throwing a party. Now, they throw a party about every weekend. Sometimes it was 100 and something people, and sometimes it was more of a chill 30 people bonfire. And that's what this was this weekend. So we were going to go to this party, and it was me, and I'm going to change my friends' names to protect them. It was me, my friend Eric, my friend Kevin, and my friend Dan. Now we took off and went to this party and arrived at this bonfire. And once we got there, I remember distinctly that Dan just kind of disappeared. So me, Eric, and Kevin just kind of chilled out. Nothing eventful really happened until Dan reappeared. And it was like some kind of alcoholic magic trick. It was like he was sitting there and he was like, "For my next trick, I will disappear." And poof, there he goes into the night. And then bam, he shows back up and he is just absolutely hammered, like really, really hammered. And he's like, "Ta-da, I'm really drunk now." So I had to scoop him up and carry him around. It's toward the end of the night. We were about to leave, and I had his arm over my shoulder, and I was carrying him around, and we were saying goodbye to everybody at this point. And his ex-girlfriend happened to be there. Her name, we'll call her Sarah. And so as I'm taking him around and letting him hug everybody, I'm kind of leaning him into everybody to hug him and say goodbye. I take him to Sarah, and I hug her and tell her goodbye and how good it was to see her, and I lean him in to hug her. And they hadn't talked, it seemed like, at this point, but it seemed like they were on good stance, so it was kind of awkward anyway. But I lean him in to hug her, and then he starts to kind of like really grip onto her and go in, and he starts going in for a kiss. He's like got his mouth hung wide open, and he's going in for this kiss, and she's like limboing back, like she's trying, just dodging him with everything in her. And we're all just shocked, like this horrifying, like embarrassing moment. And none of us are more shocked than her boyfriend, who is standing right beside her with this like, what the fuck look on his face. And as Dan just leans in to get her, I pull him back like I'm reeling in a fish. I'm just like, "Oh, okay, Dan, it's time to go home." And she just kind of smiles at me, and I'm like, "Bye, Sarah." And I just kind of drag Dan out of there. And as we're making our way to the car, it's just me and him, and I got him, limped over my shoulder, and I stopped and looked at him, and I was like, "Hey, Dan, what the fuck was that, man?" And he was like, I don't know, Bradley." And then we get in the car and we take off, and we're having a good time besides that embarrassing moment. And we go to anywhere that we go to the place that drunk people naturally want to go to get a late night meal. We go to Taco Bell and we get the big 12 pack of tacos, the big old box, and we're munching down on those. And Dan is already passed out. I mean, he's gone. I mean, he was like, "Oh, Taco Bell," and then he was out in the back seat just asleep. So we arrived at my buddy Kevin's house, and now we've got to get Dan out of the car, and he is dead to the world. It's weekends at Bernie's at this point. He's limp. And so I have to pick him up like a drunken baby and cradle him in my arms to carry him down the steep driveway to Kevin's house, to his back door, because we don't want to wake his mom up, because he lives with his mom at this point. And so as we're making our way to the back door, he wakes up in my arms and looks up at me and just says, "Hey, Bradley." And I just looked down and said, "Hey, Dan." And then he just puts his hand on my chest and then lays his head on his hand that is on my chest and just goes back to sleep peacefully. And I'm just like, what the hell? And finished carrying him down there, trying not to drop his ass, because I stumbled a couple of times, because I'm also drunk at this point. And we get to the back door, and Kevin just looks at me as he's saying something and stops mid-sentence and notices how I'm holding Dan and how he's passed out like a drunken little baby on my chest. And he's like, just gives me a grin. I'm like, "Just open the fucking door." And he opens the door, and I take him and tuck him into his the couch that he's sleeping on. And I make my way to my bed, and I go to sleep. And then the next day, as I'm waking up and thinking about everything that happened, there's something in my pocket. And if you can guess by the title of the story, it was a taco. And so that was a good night. It was a good night. Nobody got hurt. Maybe a little bit of embarrassing story came out of it, but it was all in all a good night. So if you like this story, leave me a like on this video and just subscribe to my channel. And I'm going to come out with more of these. I think I'm going to do a whole series on drunk embarrassing stories because God knows I have a lot of them. Anyway, I hope you like this, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.